All right, welcome to the AdaptX podcast, where we have conversations with individuals building accessible businesses, advocating for inclusion, or excelling in adaptive sports. Our intention is never to speak on behalf of those with disabilities, but to provide a platform to amplify their voice and share ideas for a more accessible world. Today, I'm joined by Matt Downing, the Program and Events Coordinator at the Concussion Legacy Foundation. Prior to that, he spent the last 3 years working in the Olympic and Paralympic movement, planning and executing large-scale events and tournaments as organizations such as U.S. Soccer, USA Triathlon, and USA Football. He's committed to making sports safer and accessible for all, a mission that we are very well aligned with. So, Matt, thank you for joining me today.
Brendan, it's great to be on here.
So I imagine I read that your family has a strong competitive sports background. So I would imagine growing up, sports played a large part of your life. For me, I can pinpoint my transition kind of into inclusive sports when I first volunteered with Special Olympics. So I know you're passionate about inclusion and accessibility within sports, not just the competitive nature of sports itself. Did you have a formative experience, I guess, that made you want to advocate for a more inclusive and accessible opportunities for people in sports?
Yeah, it kind of goes back to my childhood and how I was kind of introduced to sport. I had cerebral palsy, and so I was born with that at a very young age. And through sports, to be able to help me grow and meet new people and become just a person who I am, that I can live and breathe. I wasn't supposed to be able to walk. I was supposed to be in a wheelchair my whole entire life. That's what doctors told me. So sports kind of was a catalyst to help me be able to walk, move, talk freely on my own. And I kind of use that as a platform to help not only myself, other people. So it kind of started young. And then as I started getting more in the space in high school and college, I started to saw the professional side of working and helping people. But sports has kind of been always there through and through to help me through difficult times.
As a youth with a diagnosis like cerebral palsy, which impairs more motor skills, motor coordination, etc., did you find sports to ever be frustrating? Did you find good opportunities that were accessible for you personally?
Yeah, it was very much difficult, playing sports. For reference, I'm about 6'3", 185. So I'm a very tall individual, and the main sport I played was soccer and basketball. And so for soccer, I was a goalie. And so that's, a lot of hand-eye coordination, a lot of very vivid movements. And so that was twice as difficult as you would a normal person. And my mom was in the military, so I've lived in 10 different states. And so I've had to move around constantly and try to fight my way on to be the starting keeper or to fight my way onto a team. I more or less didn't tell people a lot about my disability. It was kind of just like, hey, I'm here to show up and how to compete and just let my skills and my abilities speak for themselves. And so people don't have a preconceived notion of, what I can and cannot do because of my disability.
Yeah, so for lack of better terms, you competed in traditional sports, not organizations like Special Olympics.
I didn't do any like Special Olympics or top soccer or any of those. It was very much mainstream, and I competed at the travel club level, did varsity soccer and all that things for 3 or 4 years. So I was always on that next competitive level in terms of soccer.
CP soccer does exist as its own entity. Were you involved in CP soccer in some way?
No, I didn't really interact. I actually found out about them in college. I got connected with Ashley Hammond, who's and now at the International Federation. But it was kind of a funny story how I got introduced into adaptive sports, because I didn't know a lot about it. But I was in college. And this was prior to me working within the Olympic and Paralympic movement. I was looking to represent my country, similar to the Olympic and Paralympians they're doing now over in Paris. And I saw that U.S. Soccer has in the CP soccer team, and I saw some on social media. I reached out to the head coach, Stuart Sharp, who's now a very close friend of mine, and I talked to him, monthly, but he was essentially said, hey, send me some videos of what you can do. We have a camp here in 3 weeks down in Florida. If we like what you see, then we'll invite you down. So within a matter of a month, I went from not knowing anything in the movement to being an actual trialist for the CP soccer team and getting to meet all the amazing people in that space and learning more and more about adaptive sport. I didn't even know it existed until I was just looking to get more involved, to really make an impact. And I ended up being, helping part of the national team.
Yeah, I think this recording's timely because the Olympics wrapped up a little more than a month ago, and the Paralympics are now in the thick of things. You worked in both sectors, if I'm correct, Olympic sport and
Yes.
Paralympic sport. What did you notice to be the biggest differences between the two, and maybe also, I guess, the similarities between the two?
Yeah. Brandon, you probably can relate to this a lot, but there's the monetary differences when it comes to supporting the programs. It was very stark when I noticed it when I was at U.S. Soccer. So I traveled for them back in 2018, 2019. They didn't have as robust program as they do now for their international teams. So it's very much like, hey, you all, and your national team athletes, but you're getting the secondhand apparel or the Nike stuff that they partnered with. You're not getting the big of a travel budget. There's not all these things that you see with the men's and women's first teams or that sort of thing. So I kind of saw from the back end, oh, this is how the players are treated. This is kind of the things that we do. And then as I got more and more into it, I saw more the admin and the other side of things. But I would say that's probably the main difference. But besides that, I would say the similarities is just the camaraderie and the teamwork that people have, both whether you're an Olympic or a Paralympic athlete. We all share struggles and difficulties of getting to where we are today within sports and just within life. And so it's just remarkable to hear the stories of people, how they came to find the sport they love, why they continue to play the sport. Because, a lot of these athletes, especially as in the Paralympic side, are not paid, have full-time jobs. And this is something they do as quote unquote a hobby or something they do as an extracurricular activity. And so just seeing the passion, the love they have for each other and for the sport is something that really touched my heart and made me want to do more and more in this space.
Yeah, and I'm hoping, obviously, this Paralympics has been the
Yep.
most significantly televised and
Mhm.
promoted event ever, I guess, in the adaptive
Yep.
sport space. And I see, maybe it's just the echo chamber that I'm in, but I see a lot more about it this year than I did even
Mhm.
4 years ago. So hopefully that trend will continue to show sponsors and companies that there
Mhm.
is a market, and that you can kind of grow and use these adaptive athletes as the face of businesses, and market those athletes in the same way that you would market Olympic athletes.
100%. Yeah, I've seen a lot more inclusive of programming as well as sponsorships from different companies, such as Nike and other Unilever and other brands that have really taken on board
Yeah.
adaptive and people with disabilities.
Is there a path to the Olympics and Paralympics occurring simultaneously? Do you think that would, I mean, obviously it would push the needle even further forward because there's a lot of people tuning in for the Olympics, and then maybe at some point they don't realize that the Paralympics are following up a couple
Yeah.
weeks later. So I assume it's a logistical challenge, but do you envision, I guess, a world maybe where those two entities can kind of work together and happen simultaneously?
I think it's hard being from the events and logistics space. I think it's hard logistically and just space and venue wise to have it all concurrently unless you have a massive space that can hold different sports at the same time and the different, there's different classification, different specificities just for Paralympics versus Olympics. And so I think accessibility is a big issue as well as just making sure the timing and everything runs up because you'll end up having huge overlap in terms of venue changes and things like that. So that's why they take that gap is so they can transform the venues into something different and completely more accessible for athletes and better experience for them and the fans. I think you want to have the Paralympics shine in their own right and not kind of be overshadowed. And I worry that if we combine the two, that may be the case. Whereas the Olympics may take the prime time spots, whereas the Paralympics are falling later in the evening or the afternoon, and so you're not getting that much excitement, and the fans may get tired and
Yeah.
overexerted trying to go to all the different events all at once.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point for sure. I just wonder if even the orientation of Paralympics first and then Olympics second would pay larger dividends. But again, I know they have to prioritize the event that generates the most revenue, generates the most attention. And for now, that's going to be the Olympics. And maybe it will always be the Olympics, but it's at least great to see a trend in the right direction in terms of the inclusivity and accessibility of the sports.
100%. I think maybe there is a pathway one day of maybe there is a crossover. There's a couple of days where they do intersect. And so you can get that kind of cool collaboration and just having the fun social media content you can get out of that. Just having Paralympic and Olympic athletes like interacting in the village or just around different sporting events would be massive. So maybe there could be a crossover period.
Yeah,
Which
absolutely.
would be
What did you learn from organizing events, I guess, in terms of accessibility, not just the physical space, but also maybe some other pieces that go into making an event inclusive and accessible? I think I'm phrasing that question from, like, for us, we organize a road race, and I'm
Mhm.
interested in the inclusivity and accessibility of road races, community
Yeah.
5Ks, etc. But I know it goes beyond just the ability to physically access a space. There's a lot more that goes into accessibility. So, can you think of anything, I guess, that stands out in terms of what other events could do more effectively to make their events more inclusive and accessible?
Yeah, I think the first part is even before planning the event is just having people in the room who understand disabilities and can kind of be the voice at the table of like, hey, this is what we need to do to make sure these people in groups are included. Because a lot of event organizers, I think, and what I've seen is they start off in a place where they're already not even thinking about those groups because of budgetary reasons or timelines or whatever it be. But it's if you get the people on board at the start, then it's a much cohesive and easier process to manage. So I think that's kind of the first of the planning stage is just making sure they're included. Like, hey, what do we need? What are the guidelines? What have other events done to make things more accessible? And kind of using that template to go forward and plan. And so that's what I use when I plan events, whether it's a large scale gala in Boston that we're going to have later this year, the foundation, or it's just, I'm running a flag football tournament or a soccer tournament. I want to make sure parking's accessible. I want to make sure people have access to water. I want to make sure if we're building these grandstands you see at like different sporting events like Paris or Masters or whatever you name it, there's a wheelchair ramp or there's access to walkways for people with wheelchairs and people like that to get around. And so it goes just above and beyond of just, what do we need to do and what we have to do to what does the experience look like for those people and what will they value for first and foremost.
We are grateful for the support of our first show sponsor. Resolution Fitness offers leading brand health club equipment and accessories for residential and commercial use. In addition to traditional exercise equipment, they specialize in adaptive fitness products and wheelchair accessible machines. If you're interested in outfitting your fitness facility or home gym to be more accessible, visit www.resolutionfitness.ca or the link in the show notes below. What led you to transition to your current position with the Concussion Legacy Foundation?
Yeah, I got in this role a year ago, so I was just on my 1 year anniversary in July. But I wanted to go into a space where uh, I kind of saw not a lot of representation in the concussion and traumatic brain injury space, and I think it's an overlooked population, and a lot of people want to get into that. And I'm in a team now where we have about 25, 30 full-time employees, a very small staff, but I get to make a big impact in a lot of different areas. I do everything from event planning for our galas to managing partnerships to relationships to, managing budgets to anything and everything to help get not only people more aware about concussions and traumatic brain injuries and that, but just making sure sports are more safe and more accessible for all. And so this gave me the platform and space to do it. So that's kind of why I made the jump over to Concussion Legacy Foundation.
Yeah, I know a Colts player, maybe even this week, just announced that he was going to wear the Guardian cap, which is, for people who might not be familiar, just a soft shell that goes over the helmet of football players. And I think it's been shown to reduce impact up to 20-25% or so. But there's been some pushback in using it. They use it in preseason, but it's not readily adopted yet within the actual football season, NFL season. Can you think of why it's not mandated? I mean, there's overwhelming evidence that repeated head trauma in football has long-term effects. I don't think that there's any doubt with that, not just in football and other sports as well. But why do you think there's not, and maybe there have been some measures, I guess, but why do you think there's not more significant equipment measures being made to reduce the risk of concussion?
Yeah, I think it's partially to an image and issue that I know the NFL and they struggle with that daily to make sure to keep their fans, sponsors, and everyone else happy. But also for the players and the clubs, they want to make sure they're players are safe, healthy, and I think Guardian caps are great, right? We can have all the great equipment in the world to help reduce concussions, but unless we're changing the way we play, practice, and do everything before we even get to the game, then that's gonna, trump or not, mitigate anything that may happen during the game. So I think it's just having the right resources and giving the people the right education, which is what we do at the foundation to help get people prepared. So, concussions are going to happen. We know it's going to happen. People get it from whether you're young, old, athlete, non-athlete. It's just, how do you prepare and make sure you have a great support system and have the resources around you to when it does happen, you can lean on the people around you and not end up in a worse situation.
Yeah, I mean, football gets the majority of the attention, but the prevalence of concussion in other sports, I suppose, are you familiar with kind of?
Yeah, it's been pretty wide. We've seen it across rugby. Rugby is a huge one. We do a lot of work in Australia. We have a chapter down there. We do a lot of work with the Australian Premier League. Their rugby people down there, and we try to just help people understand what a concussion is and how damaging it can be, and what the prevalence of CTE is, and explaining that to people. And we see it a lot in there. Soccer is another big one with headers. So you don't think about it, but when soccer, you don't have a mask or a helmet to protect you from that, and when the ball is coming at you 34 miles an hour, there's a lot of things that happen with that, plus head-to-head collisions we've seen a lot. So we do a lot of work over in England. We work with the English PFA for their football association and try to make sure the players are safe and know all the guidance around that. So that's a big one as well. I would say those are two sports, and hockey is also hit huge, as we've seen over the past couple of years.
Yeah, I have a 2-year-old and a 9-month-old, so I think they're going to stick to golf and cross country.
Yeah, non-contact sports.
Yeah, absolutely. I think my wife has already drew the line in the sand with those. But what upcoming projects or initiatives within the foundation are you kind of most excited about?
Yeah, some we just launched a couple of days ago has been our Concussion Awareness Month campaign. So this is a fundraising campaign we're using to promote Concussion Awareness Month. Give people nice tips and tricks to do. When you get a concussion, how to manage it. We have resources here at the Concussion Legacy Foundation that help people. So we have a free CLF helpline that people can call, and we have a member of our staff that answers and will help give you all the resources you need, whether that is providing you with a consultation for a doctor, for concussion specialists that we have within our network, giving you peer support resources if you want to connect one-on-one with someone who has been through that experience, whether it be a concussion, traumatic brain injury, post-concussion syndrome, any of those things, as well as we have a lot of different educational materials to help people just know more about concussions and what it is. And, it's not a linear recovery time. A lot of people don't realize that, you could get a concussion and you could be out for 2 weeks and be fine, but I could sustain one and it could last 4 weeks or longer. It just depends on the individual and where they at, and so we try to give people all the resources they need and meet them where they are. So that's one of our big things we just launched this year.
Nice. I mean, awareness of concussions obviously wasn't as strong. No more than a decade or 2 decades ago. It wasn't really at the forefront of conversation. So are you familiar with any links, I guess, because concussion's a traumatic brain injury. So have you guys seen, I guess, any links between maybe people who are adults now, 30, 40, 50 years old, when they were younger playing sports, perhaps concussions weren't diagnosed as readily, but now they're suffering from various symptoms that might be associated to that. Is there any, I guess, longitudinal data in like the older populations now?
Yeah, we're starting to see some of that. We do have a couple ongoing studies at Boston University and some of our partners, but what we're seeing is not really related specifically to concussions. It's more around CTE, and we're doing a lot of studies. We released a paper a while ago that we've had diagnosed people with as young as 14 and under that had CTE, and a lot of it has to do with the repetitive impacts they had playing sports like contact sports at a young age, whether that was football or a different sport. So we've seen, the link between the repetitive head impacts, people doing that and playing sports at a young age to, their later detriment, whether in their early, middle, or later in life. And so that's a big part of what we've seen. It hasn't been the concussions per se, but it's the amount of head impact someone will get over the period of time that makes them more likely to get CTE and those other neurodegenerative diseases.
Yeah, for people who aren't familiar with, I guess, the diagnostic criteria, like
Mhm.
what differentiates just, I guess, head trauma, concussion, etc. Like what's the line, I guess?
Yeah, there's different, tests that we have to perform that get that, but it's all a matter of how badly impact your brain is from the sustained contusion, whether it's you get it knocked from hitting the desk or you get hit playing a sport. It's just how long it takes you to recover, and so there's different tests that we run, and athletic trainers they run to kind of assess that. But unfortunately, a lot of the times with CTE and those neurodegenerative diseases, we don't see that until later, and we can't unfortunately diagnose CTE in life at the current time. We're getting closer and closer every day to things of that nature, but it's it's hard for us to pinpoint that down at this current time.
Yeah, that was going to kind of be my next question. Like, at what point, I guess, does repetitive concussion become CTE? And I know there's always people advocating for athletes to donate their brain to science to kind
Mhm.
of look at CTE.
Yeah.
But so is there a work in progress to identify CTE during the lifespan and maybe even come up with preventative or recovery techniques?
Yes, yeah, that is ongoing. We have a couple studies happening at BU and some other of our partner universities that are looking at exactly that and how we get that. Hopefully, we'll have some great data to share in the coming months and years about how to prevent it. But I would say we're getting closer and closer every day. Again, it's a lot of what you see with CTE is preventable. It's the only neurodegenerative disease that is preventable, and that's a large part have to do with people not having repetitive head impacts at a young age. And so a lot of what we promote now is, if you have a kid who wants to play sports, like you mentioned your daughter and things like that, we tell people, hey, don't play contact sports until you're 14 or 15. That's when they have some, baseline, they have some things interconnecting up there. They have more ability to take those impacts, but it's preventing people of getting those head impacts when they're 8, 9, and really in the still formative stages of their brain, because you don't have pain receptors in your brain, so you can't really feel, oh, I hit my head and this is how long it's going to take for me to cover. This is what I need. You just have the different symptoms when it comes to the concussions, whether that dizziness, that, and so it's really that preventative measure of not getting people to play those sports till they're a little bit older.
Yeah, I would imagine that would be a hard sell just with the rise of youth sports as
Yeah.
an industry as a whole. And I think like if soccer is one of the highest incidence of concussions, for example, like, and now people are playing it year round instead of just in the fall and the spring. Like now they never have a break from that repetitive trauma. So instead of just playing for 3 or 4 months of the year, now they're playing 12 months out of the year. And that's, I mean, elbow injuries in baseball, ACL injuries and soccer, etc. Like,
Knees.
yeah,
Mhm.
it's just the frequency, I guess, in which people are playing sports. So I feel like that would be a hard sell to convince people to wait until a certain age to start. Like, are there other preventative measures that people can take outside of, I guess, learning the technique of things, tackling, etc.?
Yeah, a lot of it really is that that's going to be your best case scenario is just not doing it before, but making sure you protect your head, whether that be different tackle techniques in football or rugby or what it means, or playing alternative sports. So we boast a lot about flag football. Flag football will be in LA 28, and so we make a big deal of pushing people to play sports like that or alternative measures, so they don't have a lot of that repetitive injury and impact. And so that's kind of what we've been promoting recently is, get more people to play flag football. That's one of the largest growing sports I know, like besides pickleball, in the U.S. that have more and more kids playing it. It's the high school sport now. There's a lot of people playing it in college. You can get college scholarships at an NAIA level to play. And so it's a big step in the right direction to get people to play more alternative versions of the games that we love.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe that's a good segue, I guess, to university adaptive sports. Like there's universities like Michigan, Arizona, Illinois that are kind of on the forefront of adding more competitive varsity level adaptive sports at university. Have you seen that grassroots effort kind of expand nationwide, I guess, during your time with US Soccer, et cetera?
Yeah, I've seen it expand, tremendously. I think, like I said, there's been a lot more focus and energy put into getting these grassroots adaptive programs up and coming, because you can't become an elite athlete overnight, right? It's, building that grassroots program and really getting the people and the right training in place to make those athletes successful. And so we're seeing a lot more resources pulled into those different categories, as well as, having different crossovers between main Olympic teams and, the other sports, and getting more people more involved and kind of just giving them a little peek behind the curtain of what it means to be an adaptive sport athlete, and, how cool it is, and, why people choose to do that.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that you weren't exposed to it until university. How do you think, I guess, your life would have differed if you found adaptive, or if there even were competitive adaptive sports programs when you were a youth and an adolescent athlete?
Yeah, I think it would have allowed me to be more involved within community and, find like-minded peers or people similar to my situation. I'm very fortunate where my cerebral palsy is mild, but that's because I've had, all the different therapies and injections and used sport as part of my catalyst to become better. But I think, there was a lot of times where felt lonely or alone, because I was like, people don't understand. I have to work 2 or 3 times harder just to make the team, or just to do this, versus someone who may not have that physical or intellectual disability that I have. And so that sense of community has been a huge thing since coming into the movement that I've really valued.
Yeah. So I guess for people who don't know about the classification system of cerebral palsy, it exists on like a 1 to 5, a GM FCS levels, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, with 5 being power wheelchair user, 4 being manual wheelchair user, 3 crutches, walking aids, and then 1 and 2 able to ambulate independently. So you're, of course, in the 1 or 2.
Yeah, the 1 to 2 range.
Yep. So so obviously your cerebral palsy is mild, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't manifest in ways that create barriers for you. I guess growing up, was your CP evident? Did your peers kind of notice differences? And was there a process, I guess, of you coming to accept or appreciate your disability when you were a kid?
Yeah, it was very prevalent. I would say early on, middle school, elementary school, along with physical therapy. I did speech therapy and occupational therapy for the longest time, and so had various speech problems I had to overcome, and really just become coherent in conversations. And so that was a big barrier to meeting people and doing things. But over time, I had different techniques I would use to help get people on my side. I love to crack jokes and try to be outgoing as I can. And so I've used that as a way to make friends in sports. Has honestly been one of the huge reasons why I get to meet so many people, because you don't really sometimes have to speak the same language or really have to understand people. It's just when you're on the field, core or whatever it may be, you're all in that situation together. And so that's kind of been the way I've gotten to make friends and get along through life.
Yeah, we talk about that shared recreation and similarities and interests being a huge way to, I guess, normalize disability inclusion within sports or fitness. So I guess one of the themes of this podcast specifically is kind of adaptive fitness and inclusion within the fitness industry. Did fitness play a role for you in high school, college, and I guess even present day? Like, I guess what aspects of fitness interest you? I guess, yeah, what do you like to do to stay active, I suppose?
Yeah, obviously playing as many sports as I can. Play golf a lot. I'm a terrible golfer, but I go out there and try. But I do a lot of yoga, and I try to do more of niche sports. I would say I try to do some ultimate frisbee. I try to do some other things to stay active and meet different groups of people because you never know who you're going to meet. And that's been one of the things that helped me get to where I am, to the connections and the camaraderie people have, whether it's adaptive or um, sports that people who don't have disabilities. So that's what I do to stay active, and then working events. Obviously, you get a big workout, carrying
Steps.
things and moving things and setting up tents, and that's a big part of my regime. I would say I don't go to the gym. I go and do a couple events, and then I'm good for a while. But yeah, fitness is a huge part of my life, and I'm always surrounded by it. With several of my family members being in the college
Yeah.
uh, scene and coaching or playing, so I'm always kind of around sports.
If you were to go to a gym, what would you want, and to like work with a personal trainer of some sorts, like what would you want them to ask you about your cerebral palsy?
Yeah, I think not. I want them to first, come to me and not try to put me in a box immediately. Try to treat me as an individual and the unique person that I am. And I want everyone to experience that, whether you're going to the doctor or going to the gym. And I want them to tailor the program to my needs and what I going through. I recently just had physical therapy because cerebral palsy is a chronic condition, and so I have several chronic back issues, leg issues, and the person I worked with was amazing. He kind of met me where I was, kind of gave me different things I should do, and not try to look down at me or try to say, "Hey, you're different because you have this disability." So just having someone who wants to talk to you as a person and see who you are besides your disability. I think a lot of people just want that and are looking for that, especially when they're in the gym setting, and it can be vulnerable because that's a very vulnerable space, because you may not pick up things right away. You may have to tweak things, to do it because your disability doesn't allow you to move a certain way. And so it's just, we find a lot of shortcuts to get to where we need to be. We're very resourceful, and that can be our advantage and our disadvantage at times, as you very well know. So just try to meet people where they are and working with them to get them to where they need to be.
In what ways has your cerebral palsy improved your life, made your life better? Um, do you think you would have been able to recognize those things when you were a kid growing up with it and presumably being frustrated by your differences, and now where you are now, having accomplished so much, I guess what can you attest your diagnosis to in that way?
Yeah, I think it's made me the person who I am. I don't hold it against me by any means. I don't blame anyone for what I was born with. I think it's allowed me to become more resilient and more persistent in what I need to do because I have to do things more and more and a couple more times than someone else would do just to get to where someone would have to. And so I'd be able to master skills very efficiently and effectively, and come up with great techniques, whether it be personally, work wise, or anything else. To if I have a goal, I'm going to accomplish it. It may take a long time. I may zigzag a little bit, but I'm going to get there in the end because, I don't let anything stop me or stand in my way just because of label or what someone, has told me I can or cannot do. Uh,
Appreciate that
so
for
that's,
sure. For people who are interested in learning more about the Concussion Legacy Foundation, maybe some of the other organizations that you're involved with, we
yep.
can include it in the show notes. But where would you recommend that they connect with you or connect with some of the organizations that you serve?
Yeah, I would say Concussion Legacy Foundation .org is a great way. And then, of course, I can give you my LinkedIn and all that. I'm happy to discuss anything, whether it be adaptive sports or otherwise. I love getting people involved, whether it be through athletes or young people in the movement who want to work in adaptive sport or want to work in the Olympics. I think that's a very underserved and overlooked um, job and lifestyle that a lot of people don't see until every 4 years, where it's kind of blown up on a big spotlight. But there is tons and tons of opportunities to work with adaptive athletes, with Olympic and Paralympic sports that a lot of people don't get to see. And I didn't know that until I actually got to see it firsthand as a player and, through various internships I did.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't work in the Paralympic space, but adaptive fitness, adaptive sports has played a huge role in my life. I'm not sure what I would be doing if I was never exposed to Special Olympics when I was during high school. So I always encourage people to get involved. You never know kind of what response you'll have to these situations and various opportunities. So getting involved with as many different organizations as possible. If you're passionate about sports, seek out Special Olympics, seek out amputee soccer, see the different athletes, see how they perform, and see how there are more similarities and differences amongst those athletes. So Matt, really appreciate you chatting. We'll definitely include links to the work that you do and then ability to connect with you in the show notes. And we'll share some of the stuff for Concussion Awareness Month. We'll probably publish this episode mid-September, so we'll share some of the stuff that you guys are to correspond to the celebration. And thanks again for joining us.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me, Brandon. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the AdaptX podcast. Our effort to amplify the ideas of our guests and create more inclusive and accessible industries is futile unless these episodes reach a larger audience. If you enjoyed our discussion today, please leave us a rating or a review on whichever platform you use. And if you would like to learn more about AdaptX, the course that we teach to health and fitness professionals and the projects that our organization is working on, you can subscribe to our newsletter through our website, www.adaptx.org. Until next Monday.